Every country has this massive pot of public money, right? It's treasury. But how on earth do you protect it from being wasted or even stolen? Well, in Malaysia, the answer is pretty cool. You build a fortress. Not with stones and mortar, but with laws and rules.
I mean, really think about that for a second. Imagine you're in charge of a nation's entire financial system. You've got billions of dollars flowing in from taxes and billions flowing out for roads, schools, hospitals, everything. How do you even begin to make sure every single cent is accounted for? It's like trying to count raindrops in a monsoon, right? It seems impossible.
So the answer is you build a legal fortress, a structure made of laws, procedures, and standards, all designed with these layers of defense to protect every single ringgit. So come on, let's take a tour of this fortress, from the massive outer walls right down to the inner vaults.
Okay, so this is the blueprint for the whole fortress. It all starts at the top with the supreme law of the land, the Federal Constitution. That's your foundation. From there, you build the inner defenses, which is the Financial Procedure Act. Then you've got the day-to-day rulebook for the guards, the Treasury instructions. And to make sure everyone's on the same page, you have a common language, the accounting standards. See how each layer builds on the one before it? It's a really smart system.
All right, let's start with those outer walls, the biggest, strongest layer of protection. These aren't just regular laws, they're principles that are literally baked into the federal constitution, and that makes them incredibly hard to change or, just ignore.
So, first up, Article 97. This establishes what you can basically think of as the nation's central vault, the consolidated fund. The idea is simple but powerful. Instead of having government money scattered all over the place in countless different accounts, almost all of it, every single bit of revenue, goes into this one single fund.
And that's the core principle right there. All the money flows in and all the money flows out through one single unified place. Why? Because by forcing all that cash through a single bottleneck, you create an instant point of control. It just makes everything so much easier to track, to manage, and to watch.
Okay, so if the consolidated fund is the vault, then the annual budget is the battle plan. Article 99 of the Constitution says the government has to present this super detailed plan to Parliament every single year. It lays out exactly what they think they're going to earn and precisely how they plan to spend it.
And here's the crucial part. This isn't some secret plan cooked up behind closed doors. The budget is a public document. It's a roadmap that you, me, and our representatives can look at to hold the government accountable for what it promised to do with our money.
This brings us to maybe the most important part, the ultimate gatekeeper. Article 104 is like the big, heavy lock on the vault, and it's crystal clear. Not a single dollar can leave that consolidated fund without Parliament's explicit permission. What that means is the people's elected representatives literally hold the keys to the Treasury. They get the final say, period.
But look, having a plan and a gatekeeper, that's not quite enough, is it? You also need someone to go back and check the books after the money's been spent. You need an independent watchdog, someone whose only job is to make sure the rules were actually followed. And that's where the Auditor General comes in.
So this watchdog is the Auditor General, and this role is considered so critical, so important, that it's not just mentioned once. It's established by 3 separate articles in the Constitution. This tells you it's not just another government department. It's a constitutionally protected, fiercely independent office.
And their job is basically to climb up the watchtower and see everything. They audit the accounts of both the federal and the state governments. And this is the really important bit. They don't report back to the government they're auditing. Nope. They report all their findings directly to Parliament. That's how you ensure real, independent scrutiny.
Okay, so we've looked at the high-level constitutional walls. Now let's go deeper inside the fortress and check out the rules of engagement, the really detailed stuff that governs the day-to-day financial operations.
And this is where the Financial Procedure Act of 1957 comes into play. If the Constitution tells you what to do, this act tells you how to do it. It lays out the nitty-gritty procedures for everything: collecting revenue, making payments, even managing public property, like government cars and buildings. It's the operational manual for the whole system.
And we can drill down even further to the Treasury instructions and Treasury circulars. The best way to think about it is this. The Treasury instructions, or TIs, are like the big, permanent rulebook that every guard in the fortress has to memorize. It details every single procedure. Then you have the Treasury circulars, or TCs. These are more like daily memos with new orders or small updates, just to keep the rules fresh and current.
Right, we're at the final layer of our fortress.
It's one thing to have all these rules, but it's another thing entirely to make sure everyone is reporting their information in the exact same way. You need everyone to be speaking the same language.
And that common language is the government accounting standards. These standards basically dictate the exact format for how financial statements must be prepared. This is so important because it means when Parliament or the Auditor General looks at a report from, say, the Ministry of Health, they can easily and fairly compare it to a report from the Ministry of Education. It creates total consistency across the board.
So let's just take a step back and look at this whole amazing fortress we've built. Why does all this matter? Well, it ensures that Parliament, the people's representatives, have ultimate control. It creates a single, unified system that's way easier to monitor. It forces independent scrutiny from the outside. And it standardizes the way everyone talks about money. Each one of these layers, the walls, the watchtowers, the rulebooks, is there to build the one thing that holds it all together: public trust.
So there you have it, a really strong, well-designed financial fortress built on layers and layers of law and procedure. But it leaves us with one last and maybe the most critical question. A fortress, no matter how strong, is only as good as the people who are guarding it. So who guards the guardians? That's the question that every single one of us has to keep asking.